Welcome to Vitamin OC. I'm Joanna Weiss.
And I'm Whitney Gomez. Every week we bring you your recommended dose of civics and civilization in Orange County.
And today we are so honored to have Jason Stern with us. Jason is the founder of Delante Systems, a firm that works with families to transition leadership from one generation to the next. And let me just read a little bit about what you do. You are an accredited financial transitionist. You've had a long, successful career as an executive coach, leadership coach, consultant, and a turnaround CEO. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Great to be with you guys.
You are the husband of one of my favorite people on the earth. You have 3, by all accounts, thriving children. You are an athlete. You played tennis in college. You continue to play tennis. You're a golfer. You work out every morning with a group of men, which we want to talk to you about. You and I have a long history of coaching youth soccer together. And Joanna, you'll have to know that Jason Stern's not afraid to pull out a whiteboard, even if the kids are like 4 years old.
Perfect.
So that's your claim to fame.
There is no age too young or too old for a whiteboard.
My husband agrees. He went and bought one when they were about 3 years old and wrote on it every day for them as well. So I had mentioned before the word financial transitionist, and we're hoping that you might be able to explain a little bit about what that is.
And there's probably 2 ways I can get us started. The broader scope is that we help people unwrap the gift of change. Change is scary to many people because it involves a lot of uncertainty, and we don't like uncertainty. We like the answer. We want to get right to the point. What's the quickest route? Just give me what I need. But change brings out the best of us, and it reveals a lot about who we are and about our relationships, about our goals, and about the things that are important to us. And so if we embrace change, we can gain a lot from that. The second part of that is the more practical side. Okay, there's 2 sides to giving and estate planning. There's the giving side and the receiving side. And so we so often think about the giving side. What is my estate? Is everything in order? Most people spend less time thinking about the receiving end. And if we do spend any time on the receiving end, it's everyone should be grateful. Just be grateful and end of story. What we really need to recognize is that both sides are going through a transition. There's a transition from the giver, someone who is aging in life, often going through medical issues, loss of their cognitive abilities, physical abilities. They're in a pretty major stage of change. Often there's a spouse involved who now is working on the medical side. Social life has changed. There's a lot of change going on as we age. And so the giving side has to address their physical areas and financial areas, right? So do I have my estate, what we call in order? But it's more than just, do I have my estate in order? There's a lot more to it as far as what's going to happen to my beneficiaries and what does all this mean? So it invokes a lot of emotion on that side. On the receiving side, there's a whole slew of things as well. We like to just simply say, well, they should just be grateful. But to receive something also invokes a lot of emotion. Not everyone is prepared to receive what is on the receiving end of a financial transition. And so we spent time working on both sides, preparing in anticipation of the transition, through the transition, and after transition.
For families who don't have, say, accountants and trust attorneys, what are the things that they need to have in order to prepare?
So the interesting thing is that financial transition is more about transition and less about finance. There are 4 stages to transition, and every human goes through those 4 stages. Rich or poor, and whether you have estate attorneys or you have a massive fortune or nothing, you still go through it. Your family goes through it. The giving end, the receiving end, both go through it. And the emotions tend to be the same, because even with the wealthy families, the things that irk people, the things that gets brewed up, it's not the money. It's the wounds that are buried deep inside. We've had things small as necklace that just can divide a family. If you think about, mom has a necklace, she's going to give it to one of her daughters. She chooses ex-daughter to give it to because she thinks that daughter is more into jewelry than the other daughter. If the transition process is not handled well, mom's passes, the necklace gets given to daughter who gets the necklace, and other daughter goes, oh, I knew it. Right? She was going to give it to you because she always says that you were the one who liked jewelry better, and quote unquote, she liked you better for whatever reasons. And so you've just scratched a wound that is deep down, and mom's not even alive anymore to referee this little thing that was on a necklace. Never mind the value of the necklace. It could be $5. That's not the point. But everything comes with emotion. And so all this work, it's much more emotional than it is financial. And so whether you have $10, $10 million, whatever your number is, it doesn't matter. The fact that you're going through a transition, either late in life or you're on the receiving end, what is going to be having to deal with someone passing or whatever it may be, the work's the same because emotions are the same.
What are the 4 stages of transition?
There's anticipation. So that's the prior to the transition happen. There's an ending. So something happens, ends. There's passage, which is your time you spend working through the things, and then a new beginning.
Well, it's encouraging to hear there's always a new beginning. I like the sound of that. One of your accreditations we noticed was Women in Transition, which sounded to me like an Amy Schumer movie. And I know it's
the menopause edition.
Exactly. Can you talk to us about what that means?
Sure. So 70% of women will change their financial advisor within 1 year after their spouse dies. And by the year 2030, women will control more wealth in households than men. So women are a very big part of managing families' wealth and their finances. There are some differences. Women have strengths that are different than men. And so the course and the accreditation is really around just understanding those and kind of taking advantage of those. Women are better with uncertainty. They're much more comfortable with uncertainty. They say that, women like the process. Men want the answer. Women want to talk and learn. Men just want to get things done. It does come down to a lot of age-old ideas that I don't know if we should be promoting anymore, but there are differences. And it's really just understanding those differences. At the end of the day, this work is really, it's about listening. And so you got to listen to your clients. We listen really hard, and then we got to adjust based on what we're hearing. We've got a playbook, we've got tools, we've got all these things, but it's not formulaic. And so whether it's a man, a woman, someone who's comfortable with finance, someone who's not, even within genders, some people have backgrounds in some of the stuff, some don't. There's so many differences that we have to listen for. Also, just understanding that there are differences typically in the way the genders deal with transition.
I tend to agree with your characterizations of the differences between men and women. Can you give some examples of ones that have gone well, ones that maybe have gone poorly, and what lessons the rest of us can learn from them?
Sure. The easiest is probably to describe ones that go wrong because they're obvious. And I'm going to share one, not a client of mine, and I hate to even bring it up because to me, it's the definition of failure. They have 3 kids, they have grandkids, and one of the kids doesn't speak to the family anymore. And, the family collectively, I don't know what their number is, but it's in the hundreds of millions of dollars. This is not a function of there's not enough money to go around. This is back to emotion. Not a client, so I don't know where it went wrong, but the transition went wrong. They feel like they were not understood, not heard, not appreciated for whatever it may be, and has decided to kind of cut off the rest of the family. So, grandma doesn't get to talk to her son, doesn't get to see grandkids, cousins don't get to see each other. To me, total definition of failure. There's a lot to the generations. The older generation, talking about money is taboo. We don't speak of money. Our generation, we grew up with not talking about it, but now we talk about it a little more, so we're a little more comfortable. And then our kids are, I call it the Zillow generation because they know the value of the house that they live in. They know the value of every house, of every friend they've ever been to. And in certain neighborhoods, they see these numbers. They get flyers sent home that says, this house is sold for 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever millions of dollars. And so they see all this, and yet, they don't have a nickel. They don't have 2 nickels to rub together in their bank account. They don't have any money, but they know money's around them. And so, that's kind of weird. So what does that mean for them? And so each generation has its uniqueness around speaking about money. When you try to bridge these gaps, which is what we're trying to do, we're trying to bring these generations somehow to speak to one another so we can go through these transitions and make them successful. Success looks like everybody knows what's going on and gets comfortable with what's happening. The end game is that when I give, I know who I'm giving it to, or I know where I'm leaving it for. I'm comfortable with where I'm leaving it. And on the receiving end, I know what I'm getting. I know how to act. I know what the expectations are. I know what the behaviors are that I should do with this gift. And both sides know that each other knows. Right? So that's success.
That's informative and healthy.
Do you talk to everyone together and then people individually, or what's your preferred sequence?
My preferred sequence is not always what I get. People ask, who's your client? Is it me that I'm talking to now and the one maybe going to pay you? Ideally, the whole family is my client. That's how I would like it. There's advantages to family meetings, to the whole family getting together. There's advantages to one-on-ones. The ideal scenario is to know everyone. What's amazing is that older generation, you talk to them about estate planning and it's the same fears that have been embedded in them. And it's, my kids are going to go off on drugs, or some spouse is going to divorce and take the whole estate. I turn to most of my clients and I go, okay, you're worried about your kids are going to turn into druggies and not make anything of themselves, and you're going to leave them something and take away their motivation. How often does that happen? We know about our kids at 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. I don't know what age you want to pick, but you kind of know their path. Nothing's for certain. We know that. But you kind of know the path that they're headed down. And most clients, when I ask them, will be like, no, I'm pretty confident this one's on a good path. Okay, then why are you either not doing anything or setting up everything, protecting against this kid going off the deep end on drugs and never coming back? Like, it's not rational to use that one-off percentage. You're protecting the 1%. You are ignoring the 99% likelihood that things will go well. Let's spend more time talking about, if things go well, what do you want to happen with your estate?
And I imagine some people put off these discussions because they're afraid of things not going well, or it's just kind of an awkward topic to start. Do you have any suggestions for people who have been putting this off?
It's really hard, because you're absolutely right. The ostrich example is very true here. You can just put your head in the sand and you can just wait it out. It's this unique kind of thing. There's so many aspects to this. The people who have generated, the wealth, if you will. And once again, it's not about how much wealth. It doesn't matter what the number is, but the people who have generated often didn't grow up in that environment. So they've spent, their time, they've earned, they've worked hard, they've made something of this. And they feel like, and they're right, that it's theirs. They can do whatever they want with it, including nothing. And so sometimes they just choose to do nothing. But most of the time they're choosing to do nothing because they're afraid of all these issues and they don't really know how to address these issues. The first step is really to just start to address these things. And I was talking to a friend and he's like, I've got everything in a binder, everything, all my accounts, it's all, we're ready to go. I turned to their spouse and I said, how do you feel about it being on, potentially on the receiving end? And I just got a blank stare, like, no, like not even close. And why is that? Well, the one who I call the financial captain, the one who's kind of captaining the finances of the family, tends to be the one that's good at it. And often the other one isn't as good at it. And I know in Whitney, in your case, you have a background and you probably do that. And your husband is probably on the receiving end. You probably got the binder and your husband probably is the one going, I don't know anything about it, but he has a pretty good finance background as well. But some families.
Let me just jump in there and say he had a transition career-wise, and he took the captaining from me.
Yes.
Which created quite a few conversations that I did not want to have. Well, wait a minute. Why are you looking so closely at the credit card bill? So,
there's lots of transitions, and retiring is a huge transition for everyone. Once again, on that end and on the receiving end of the retirement.
My parents and I are kind of doing this on similar paths right now because I captain our finances in our house. My dad and I are both on parallel tracks preparing those financial binders for each other's spouses. And then because it's my dad, I'm planning on having him share his binder with me to start those conversations as a family.
Which is great, but you have to also remember that the ones who put together the binders are the ones who understand that terminology. The ones who didn't put the binder together, they're the ones who, in many cases, it's not their thing. No offense to them. Right. It's just not their thing. And so when you hand a binder to them without even someone around to explain it to them, even if someone was there to explain it to them, it's hard for someone who's not financially, it's not their thing. Right. And so they're going to get a binder and go, now what? We think that producing a binder
is helpful.
It's better than nothing because somebody else could come in and maybe read that binder. But it doesn't address any of the emotions, right, that go along with this. I'd put the binder in the same category as I would wills and trusts, which is those things are great to document and memorialize our wishes and intents. But we think that just because we wrote down, some bank account numbers and some passwords, that covers everything. And so, yeah, it's very nice to have, what are the accounts and I call it an inventory of your assets, which is great. But that doesn't really solve all the family issues that one's going to leave if they, don't express what their wishes are. And so if you want to get started, I would start with that more than I would start with, the documentation, or they can run parallel. And I would add that there's another interesting aspect to this, which, may be unique to certain neighborhoods or environments. I do tend to work with, people who have been successful in their careers. We had some couples over just recently, and it was funny because they were almost like competing to express who grew up poor. They were all very successful people. So kudos to them for phenomenal careers. But there was this kind of bravado. I recognize that the people who grew up without money now are in a position to have to raise kids who are not growing up poor. They're growing up with money. And the reality is many of these people are, and they're people I know are not equipped to do this. And so they stumble. And then they come and, I get the phone call going, well, how do I get my kid to appreciate X, Y, Z? And it's like, okay, where do we begin? But, they don't really want an answer. They just want their kids to appreciate, what they have. And it's hard to appreciate it when it's abundant.
It's really complicated. That's a very challenging needle to thread.
Very hard.
I want to share a story about how I got interested in what you're doing. My second child had gone off to college, and my first daughter had been in college for 2 years. So the idea of the emptying nest was not a new one. But for some reason, this more talkative child leaving the house made the house feel very quiet. And I suddenly kind of looked around and said, oh my God, like this is a transition. And I talked to your wife and said, you know what? I think I want to talk to Jason. Jason's very insightful on things like this, not even knowing that this was your career. And that afternoon, I ran into you in a parking lot randomly. And I said, Jason, I need to talk to you. I'm dealing with what felt like existential questions at the time. And you said to me, oh, I've got a one-pager on that. I'll send it over. And I'm thinking, why does this guy have a one-pager on this crisis that I'm going through? But lo and behold, you did. So I want you to share what's on that one-pager. And then I want to talk about my reaction to that one-pager.
I'm supposed to explain this creepy interaction that we had.
Intuitive. You were there in a moment that she needed you.
The document is a list of questions. It's called Empty Nest and Life Purpose. And it's meant to tease out and provoke answers around your life purpose. There's categories here. I'll just read some of them: passions and interests, strengths and talents, values and beliefs, impact and contribution. So a variety of different questions or categories. By answering the questions, the idea is that you'll question yourself, I guess, or question really kind of what your life's purpose is.
And I looked at that, and my answers were, what am I passionate about? Getting dinner on the table. What am I good at? Getting kids to school on time. Like for so many years, that had been the focus. And if you had given me that at 30, I probably would have had some phenomenally interesting
You would have aced it.
Great answers. But those interests and those hobbies have kind of gone the way of the wind for the last couple of decades. And I ended up taking this one pager on multiple women's weekend trips. And we were driving around in this big SUV, and I was asking everyone in the van, what's your greatest passion? What is the thing that really makes you feel alive? And people had answers. To their credit, I was the one with fewer answers. That sheet to me was a real wake-up call to reconnect with the things beyond the household, beyond the children. It's part of the reason that we're doing this here together today. And thank you for that sheet. I hated you for that sheet for a couple months, but it's important. And how do people react to that when you share that with them?
Yeah, it's pretty similar. And I guess I should be honest. I developed this sheet by listening to my wife, who was probably talking to you and many other people.
It was an inside job. What do you mean?
I think it's just the stage of life we're in that empty nest is, we say it and people go, oh, you're empty nest. So now what? And it's like, oh, I'm going to travel. I'm going to play golf and, whatever your thing is. And it's like, well, how much yoga can you do? It was an anticipation to all the conversations that I had heard that I put that together. But you're not the first to struggle with it.
I did share it with you.
You did.
And what was your reaction?
It was a lot. I mean, I think when we have dedicated so much of our time and effort to our kids and our family, that having to answer what's important to us now is sending a tailspin. And I think you're right that at different times in our lives, we would have just rattled off what was our life's purpose, what we were here for. It's a little daunting to try to define that without using your kids or family as the central role. So,
Yeah, and so when you guys talked about daunting or hating me, like, but what's the emotion it invokes in you guys when you read through that, or when you start to process this?
For me, there was a lot of regret of letting go of the things that I really cared about, 20 plus years ago. And I went back and I pulled out a spreadsheet that I had done when I was changing jobs. And I had like 7 or 8 different ideas of things I wanted to do. Like 6 of those things aren't even in the top 10 of things I spend my time on now. So it was regret at letting them go, and then motivation to kind of get some things back.
and I would say for me, it was more of a challenge. I know what's important to me. I know what my purpose is, but it's a reconnection. I think I got straight to the motivation part of let's make sure that I'm doing those things now more purposefully.
I have a business background. So in business, at least once a year, you're looking at your strategy. In our lives, though, we don't necessarily revisit our strategy. What you guys are bringing up is, hey, it probably doesn't hurt to reconnect with our life strategy, our life purpose, at least once a year. I would encourage folks not to have regret, because you're not really acknowledging the things that you did accomplish. I'm sure there's a lot of other things that you did that weren't even on your list. And so your list at 20 or 30 may have not been the perfect list. Empty nesting is like supersized transition. For many people, it's the first time in maybe their life that the world is their oyster. So you spend the first 20 years of your life learning, getting educated. So your life is kind of set for you. From 20 to 50, if you will, your next 30 years, you're in your career, or you're getting married, having kids, raising a family. That's kind of pre-programmed for you. And then you send your kids off to college, and the pre-programming is kind of done, unless you just want to, play canasta and golf. That's why that transition, I think, is so challenging, because we've never been required to choose our path.
Well, gratefully, when I talked to my husband about these regrets, he said, I have 3 names of things you've been doing for the last 20 years. And I think you can relax. And
they've turned out amazing. I know your kids, they're amazing.
2 episodes ago, we spoke with Dr. Carly Snyder, who is a board certified clinical psychologist. And we got into a little bit about the quote unquote manosphere and the epidemic of loneliness among young and older men in the United States right now, and how some people are addressing that loneliness in online forums. When we were talking about that with Carly, I thought of you and your 530 Nation group, because for decades now, you have been getting together with a group of men in the morning before work, working out, and you guys have built all these incredible traditions, an ocean swim on 4th of July, a half marathon on Super Bowl Sunday. And I want to just talk to you about how you put that group together and what that group has meant to you.
Okay. I should probably explain how it got started. Some of the greatest things in life didn't start with the end in mind. So I moved into the neighborhood where my brother lived 22 years ago. And there's a neighborhood pool, and I just started swimming. He would call me in the evenings and say, hey, let's swim tomorrow. And we meet up at the green belt in between our houses and walk up to the pool together. I started to dread the 8 o'clock hour, because when that phone rang, I knew I had to swim the next day. And if it didn't call, I wasn't swimming. It created such anxiety that I went to him and I go, listen, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we swim. If you can't make a call, otherwise, we don't need a call. If you're traveling for work, whatever it is, call. But otherwise, I'll just meet you at the green belt. So we started doing that. And over the years, we've gathered more people. We've expanded the days from 3 days a week up to 6, sometimes 7 days a week. And so a lot of things have changed. But I would say probably the one thing that hasn't changed in all this time is you show up. Sometimes after a late night, getting up at 5 a.m. to get to boot camp, can be hard. Sometimes you're tired from returning from a trip and time change, whatever it may be, jet lag, but you show up. And there's really no reason not to show up. And so to me, showing up is 90% of the battle. You show up. If you're not leading the workout, you don't complain about the workout. Sometimes we get on each other's nerves. Things will happen, but you work through whatever it is and you keep showing up. And that to me is the value of it, because I now know that this group of guys are always going to show up. And so I can count on that. There's some peace of mind to that. We've developed a brotherhood and we've added social aspects. We'll invite our spouses to certain things. It's evolved and meandered. We've had 1 million people tell us, oh, you should try this. And I tell them, listen, when your group's lasted 22 years, we'll try your group. But until then, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. Not that we're perfect. That's not what it is. It's not about the trainer. It's not about the next exercise. It's not about the new fad. It's literally about us showing up together every day and doing what we need to do. And so, I don't know if that answers the manosphere. I don't know if I can solve for the manosphere answer. I don't know if you want me to try to solve for it, but
we do. But that may be beyond the scope.
Yeah.
But I think it's that connection. It's the showing up. I think when you say showing up, it's meaningful in a couple different ways, right? I mean, you're showing up for each other, not just the workout. For 22 years, it's the people that keep them coming back.
Absolutely. Yeah, we show up for ourselves. We show up for each other. Absolutely.
Jason, thank you for being here today with us. We really appreciate your time and your expertise, and it was fun to have you talking to us.
We really appreciate it. Thanks for being here. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us for your recommended dose of civics and civilization.
We'll see you next time on Vitamin OC.